Okay, morning everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this overview of the library's development framework and the application process. I'm Alison. I work on the library's development team at Arts Council England. And I'll just hand over to Luke and then Andy to introduce themselves.
Morning, everyone. I'm Luke Burton. I'm the Director for Libraries at Arts Council. And yeah, like Alistair said, it's great to have such a good turnout, and we're excited to let this into the wild. But I'll hand over to Andy.
Morning, everyone. My name's Andy Kneeson. I'm a Senior Manager for Development Initiatives Operations, which means I'm a bit of a process head and have sort of been across several schemes, and I'm still across several schemes at the Arts Council, making sure they sort of work end to end. So I've had a lot of involvement in putting this together and quite excited to see it launch.
Okay, thanks both. So this is what we'll cover in today's session. We should have time for questions at the end, so please do put them in the chat and Emma will monitor that for us, or you can raise your hand at the end. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for sharing in the next few days, and Emma will also share our slides as well. A quick note to say that everything we go over today is included in the library's development framework page on our website, so don't feel like you need to take scrupulous notes. And we do recommend that you take some time to read through all the sections on that web page and the additional guidance over the next week or so. But what we'll cover today, Luke will take you through what the framework is and look at the reasons as to why you might want to apply to the framework. We'll then move on to the application process, so who is eligible, how to register, and what the application looks like. And then Andy will go over the assessment and decision-making process and a reminder of any key dates and information. And then, as I said, there should be time for questions at the end. But I'll now hand over to Luke, who will introduce the framework.
Thanks, Alison. And yeah, thanks again, everyone, for joining us. So I'll give you a kind of an overview. And I should say as well at the very start, this has been a lot of hard work by a lot of people, both within the Arts Council and externally as well. So I'd just like to upfront give a lot of thanks to those who are heads of service and those who are involved at the pilot stage, to Libraries Connected and Ben Lee at Shared Intelligence and the Shared Intelligence team for getting us here. And then also to Alison and Andy and other colleagues internally who've done a lot of the heavy lifting on this. So I'll give an idea, set the context for it very much, but it's been a big team effort on this. So this is intended to be a national framework for public library services in England. It'll be administered by Arts Council England, given that there's experience across us as an organisation who have delivered things like the museums accreditation, the arts mark schemes. So there's experience for delivering this type of activity within Arts Council. And it's about how the services can support communities and how we can show that on a consistent level nationally. So as a library service, you can apply to be part of the framework to demonstrate and evidence your commitment to ongoing development, innovation and best practice. So it's very much a service development tool. It's not just about getting a rubber stamp on something. And it's about to support you to deliver the needs of against the needs of your communities. And like I say, it demonstrates through evidence-based practice and sort of sharing that you have that commitment to develop and innovate. So we hope that it'll be an impactful service development tool that will have benefit not only in the service evolving, but also in how you demonstrate impact and can advocate at a local level. The framework is not mandatory, so it's open to all English public libraries, but on a voluntary basis. And there's no cost to join the framework. And there's no requirement to be on the framework in order to access our funding. So that's not something that's in our thinking at the moment. But again, as we say, this is a new and early scheme that is evolving over time. And it's also not intended to be a replacement for or a definition of a statutory service. So this doesn't replace your obligations under the Public Libraries Act. And being accredited doesn't mean that you then fulfill all those requirements. So it was worth just flagging those up front. Kevin, next slide, please, Alison. Thank you. So it was designed in a very collaborative way over a period of time. We, Arts Council, initially funded Libraries Connected to draft an accreditation scheme, and Shared Intelligence were commissioned to undertake that research and consultation, working closely with and informed by the public library sector on that draft scheme. So the questions that make up that final framework were developed from that piece of work, and the framework has been tested and retested with support and input from key stakeholders and library services across England. So it's to demonstrate that that there was very much a listening exercise at the start of this, but it's been developed iteratively to reflect what the sector needs, and then it's been developed iteratively internally in order that it fits within our systems. Next, please, Alison. Thank you. So the framework has a nice bit of alliteration in it. It's made up of 4 sections, and there's several questions within each of those sections, and we'll look a bit more in them in detail later. But the sections are people, so the community and local needs; the place, so local priorities and local impact; your purpose as a service, so your vision, leadership, and your use of resources; and then also the policy and practice that guides and supports the delivery of your services. So the content of the framework is very much in line with what was developed through the consultation at the pilot stages, and very few changes have been made. So it's held quite true to that, and any changes that have been tweaks, I would say, that have been made have been in order to fit them within our systems as we use them. And on the application as well, those sections, there'll be a section about collecting basic libraries data as well. So there's a number of opportunities for you to reflect against each of those areas of the framework. Next, please, Alison. So you'll see from the framework questions on our website, along with the full application guidance. So it is live there and has been for a week or so. So that is there. The information that you need in order to prepare yourself for that application is available in public now. So the questions include things like, does the library service develop its range of users? What types of data do you collect and analyse? And how do you incorporate that into your service planning? Does your library service build effective partnerships? Is there a service-wide approach to workforce development? So there's these quite broad questions that give you an opportunity to demonstrate how you do that. And you might choose to use the questions within the framework and the guidance document to guide and assess your ongoing development. So again, as well, we see this as a living thing. You'll hear about the process and application, but we want this to be a useful tool for you to use as you develop and build services over time. Next, please, Alison. Thank you. So one of the questions that we often get asked, and an obvious one, is why should you apply to the framework? What are the benefits of being involved? And we hope that it'll allow you to effectively advocate for your library service, both at local and national levels, and hopefully maybe increasingly as well, demonstrating your impact at regional level as we see devolution becoming more to the fore. And we hope that you can do that with demonstrate it with community partners, national stakeholders, local decision makers, and help you to demonstrate that your library service is committed to that ongoing improvement, innovation, best practice, local and national policy alignment, your cross-sectoral working and staff development and motivation. So it should hopefully serve a number of purposes for you, which will be from the very local as to how your service develops, then how you fit within your local framework, and then how we look at that on a regional and national level. So we hope that it has multiple applications, and part of that, I suppose, is down to what you see the benefit of being involved. Like I say, I think it is really valuable. I think we see it as a key bit of our role as a development agency. But it's one of those key questions to ask yourself is, what do you feel you'll get the benefit from it? But I think there is a number of ways you can find that useful. But I'll stop rambling on. I'll hand over to Alison again to talk about the process.
Thanks, Luke. So firstly, here's what the overall process looks like from a library services point of view, from start to finish. Once a year, registration to apply to the framework will open on Grantium, and library services will register to apply. And Grantium will accept up to 30 registrations from library services in this first year. And this year, registration opens from 9 AM on Wednesday, the 23rd of April. The library then develops its application and submits it within the timeframes given. This year, applications need to be submitted by Wednesday, the 23rd of July. Applications will then be assessed by our relationship managers, and decisions will be agreed and signed off by Laura, our Deputy CEO, who has responsibility for libraries, and also Luke. All applicants, whether successful or not, will receive a development statement with recommended next steps. Successful applicants will become part of the framework for 5 years, after which they reapply. And unsuccessful applicants will receive feedback from their relationship manager and can reapply when the next registration window opens. And I'll take you through those steps in more detail. But firstly, I'll just show you where the guidance is. As we've mentioned, all of the general and application guidance is on our website via the supporting libraries page. The address is at the top of this slide. And we strongly advise you to read the guidance before deciding whether to make an application. The main Libraries Development Framework webpage contains the general guidance split into 7 sections, and in section 4, how to apply, you'll find the guidance for the application form, the framework's terms and conditions, and a step-by-step Grantium guide for the framework. And also the general and application guidance are available in large print, audio, British Sign Language, and easy read. And if there are further access requirements, then please do contact us. But just to reiterate, please do take the time to read through all of those sections and documents carefully. Right. So who is eligible to apply to register to be part of the framework? To apply, you must meet the following criteria. So you must meet the definition of an English public library service as defined by the Public Libraries and Museums Act 1964. So you must contribute to the local authority's statutory provision, and you must deliver a library service as part of a local authority or be commissioned to deliver by a local authority in England. You must be a service rather than an individual branch library within a service. And where a commissioned organisation delivers more than one library service, there should be one application per library service. So in short, applications cannot come from an individual person, an individual branch library, or from an independent or community managed library. Library services can include community managed libraries, but the main applicant must be a library service that contributes to the authority's statutory provision. So let's move on to the registration step. You must use our system, Grantium, to submit your registration and application. So this means you'll need to have a validated, up-to-date applicant profile on Grantium. So please do check that you have this. And if you don't, then please contact our customer services team who will help you get that set up. That you can contact them through our website, and there's also details at the end of this presentation. So the registration step, there are a predetermined number of application slots each year for the framework. There are 30 slots this year for library services, and because there are a set number of slots, we require you to register to apply. And to reiterate again, before registering, we strongly advise you to read the guidance on our website to decide if you're ready to submit an application this year. It's important that registration slots are allocated to library services who are in a position to and are ready to apply during this application round. So please do read the guidance. And if you decide you'd like to apply this year, then complete the registration step on Grantium from when it opens at 9 AM on Wednesday, the 23rd of April. And we will close the registration on Grantium once all 30 slots are filled. Registration is a very simple step on Grantium, as shown in the image on the right. We ask you to select your library service from the drop-down list and to confirm that you intend to apply this current round, that you've read the guidance, and that you're a library service rather than an individual library. And once you've completed the short registration and you're allocated one of the 30 slots, the application form will become available straight away for you to start to work on. So the application process. So we've designed the application to be practical, accessible and streamlined process for you to undertake as a library service. When you open the application on Grantium, you'll see that general details, address, contact information have been pulled across automatically from your applicant profile. There's then a section that collects basic information about your library service, such as number of static libraries visits per year. This section isn't assessed, it's just for us to develop a wider picture of library services that are applying into the framework. So, as Luke said earlier, there are 4 main sections within the application: people, place, purpose, and policy and practice, and each with several questions. And the questions within the sections require one of 2 types of answer, which are free text answers, where you can use up to 3,000 characters to answer the question, and multiple choice checkboxes, where you can select as many checkboxes as required to answer the question. Each question has an essential requirement, and you need to demonstrate how you meet the essential requirement within your answer. The essential requirement is a minimum standard, and you should also include a range of relevant examples that help to answer the question as well as addressing that essential requirement. The application guidance for each question is broken down into what you need to demonstrate within your answer, why the question is important, the essential requirement to address, and a range of examples for you to consider. And also, we do not require attachments or any additional documents. So here's what the application looks like on Grantium. The image on the right, it's a little small, but it just gives you an idea of what it looks like. And you'll see we've included the essential requirement underneath each question in green to highlight that this needs to be effectively addressed within your answer. And then next to that screenshot on the left is the corresponding guidance with the sections that I've just highlighted from the top. So what you need to demonstrate, why the question is important, the essential requirement, and then a range of possible examples. And just to highlight here that this list of examples for each question isn't an exhaustive list. A library service can include their own examples to effectively answer the question. So you need to submit your application on Grantium by the deadline of Wednesday, the 23rd of July. Grantium will close all applications on this date, and if you've not submitted your application by this date, it will not be assessed, and you'll need to register again the following year. Right, so I'll now hand over to Andy, who will go into assessments and decisions.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you, everyone. Right, so let's jump into the next slide if we could, Alison. Thank you. So we'll assess your application by looking at how you address the essential requirements for each question and how you use a range of examples to effectively demonstrate how your library service meets the needs of the subject area of the question. We did a lot of work in trying to create a kind of narrative thread between guidance, question, and how it's assessed. So there's a real read across there. So this is why we recommend thoroughly reading the guidance before and during the application process. And each answer is assessed on its own merit, and we'll reach the following outcomes: strong met, met, or not met. Strong met will demonstrate strong evidence of a sophisticated understanding of the focus of the question. It has a broad range of offers, practices, and policies in place that meet the needs of the subject area in highly impactful ways, and focuses resources on meeting those needs innovatively and responsively. The library service goes beyond the suggested examples. If you would score met, the library service demonstrates clear evidence of a good understanding of the focus of the question. It has offers in place that meet the central needs of the subject area and focuses resource on meeting those needs. The answer is clear and comprehensive, illustrating broad-ranging and effective practices that are embedded within the service. There may be some limitations and/or the answer may only partially address a range of examples. If an answer were to score not met, it would demonstrate that the library service is working towards a clear understanding of the focus of the question. It may not yet have clear and focused offers or practices or policies in place for this particular area, and the answer and examples would be limited and could be developed further. A not met rating will be applied to the answer if the library service does not sufficiently address the essential requirement. So to be successful, answers will need to be assessed as strong, met, or met, with the overall outcome being the majority of assessments awarded. For example, out of the 14 questions, if an application has 5 met and 9 strong met, the overall outcome will be strong met. And conversely, if an application has 8 met and 6 strong met, the outcome overall will be met. If an outcome is assessed as not met, then the overall application will receive not met as well. So if I could go to the next slide, please, Alison. The decision panel, which is made up of Luke and Laura, will have the opportunity to accept the recommendations of the assessment or to overturn them. So it may be possible that through an assessment, some things have been highlighted that actually Luke and Laura take a different view on. However, we would largely expect, and this is based on other similar programs, that the assessment is carried out in conjunction with the guidance, and that everything in the assessment is true and good. It's just an extra level of check that we have there, and so the powers of the panel are kind of absolute. And the decisions will be announced in December of this year. Okay, next slide, please. So if you have been successful, you're part of the framework. What happens? So we'll send you a decision letter. This will be through Grantium, and a development statement with feedback on your application. This will highlight any areas that you may wish to focus on as you continue to develop as a library service, and suggested areas of the framework to be developed and recommended next steps. Will also include a breakdown of the individual assessment outcomes for each question on your application. And you'll be invited to become part of the framework for the next 5 years. And this will mean you'll be permitted to use the library development logo in accordance with our branding guidelines, among other things. Each year we'll announce the successful library services and publish a list on our website. We intend to do a full comms campaign around any announcements, and in the months following, we'll develop case studies from the new library services in the framework, have a celebration webinar, and undertake other comms. As more libraries enter the framework, the comms will be more embedded, and we will grow a rich portfolio of best practice, case studies, and other resources. So once you've accepted your offer letter notifying you of inclusion into the framework and accepted the terms and conditions, we'd love to hear your success stories. So do share, promote on your own comms channels, and share with us via the libraries team. We also plan on keeping in touch with the libraries within the framework through an annual development newsletter. And importantly, you'll be able to use being part of this national framework as advocacy for your library service. And as mentioned, your inclusion to the framework lasts 5 years, after which you will need to submit a new application. So it's a kind of rolling program, as it were. This will be a full application to demonstrate how your continued commitment to ongoing progress and best practice and innovation is still demonstrating the requirements of the framework. So if you weren't successful, if we assess your application as not met, you'll receive a development statement and a summary of the individual assessment outcomes for each question as well. This development statement will be written for you for your library service by one of our library's relationship managers, and it will highlight those key areas for you to further develop as a library service. So it will also recommend next steps and useful resources to support. You'll be able to book feedback sessions with one of our library's relationship managers to discuss your application outcome and your development statement. And we would encourage you to continue developing your practices and to submit a revised application during a future assessment round when you are ready. Also important to say is that an unsuccessful result can be used by library services when advocating with local decision makers and to leverage future opportunities and funding in the areas highlighted in the development statement. So a few other little bits of key information then, if I may. So our customer services team, Alison's, and I think Luke as well, I've mentioned them already. They are briefed. They are across the scheme. They have huge amounts of understanding. They're quite an amazing and efficient team. So if you do need to contact them about anything, particularly around Grantium support, you can do so. They're really helpful for guiding people through the system. But they're briefed on all aspects of the scheme as well. The libraries team are also available to support with any queries around the program. The key dates then. So registration opens on Grantium at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, 23rd of April. As Alison has said, it's a really, really slim step, and it's designed to kind of capture just very basic information so that you can then take your time with the application. But because we needed a limited number of slots this year, it's the most effective way to kind of capture that. If you don't intend to complete the application this year, then hold off registering. You kind of, otherwise you will occupy a place for somebody else. So Wednesday 29th, all of the completed applications will need to be submitted, and then the decisions will, as I've said, be announced in December of 2025. Key links for guidance and customer services and the contact email for libraries are on this slide as well. And so any queries about the program, the libraries development framework, please don't hesitate to email that. So there's a couple of questions coming in on the chat. I'm not sure I'm best placed to answer all of them. But I can see, can we complete an application offline? So we will need all applications to be submitted through Grantium to be considered. However, we do have all of the application questions online. So if you wanted to work offline before transposing it into the system, you could do that. So I can't quite see all of the questions, but I'm going to move on to next steps for libraries, and maybe are we picking up questions at the end, guys? Or
Yeah.
Cool.
We're
I
on
just
the
wanted to address.
final slide now, not long
All right,
to
then.
go now. Okay, so these are the next steps for you guys as library services, just to go over in your heads before you register. So ensure you have that Grantium profile and it's all up to date. And if it's not, then please do contact our customer services team. Read the guidance. We can't say this enough. Please read the guidance on the webpage, including the terms and conditions and the application guidance. Then decide if you're ready to apply this year. If so, complete the registration step on Grantium from 9 a.m. on Wednesday, the 23rd of April. If you're not ready to apply this year, that's absolutely fine. Use the time to study the guidance, develop your application offline, and make the decision next year about registration. If you decide to register and you're allocated one of the 30 slots, work on your application over the next 12 weeks and submit it any time up to the 23rd of July. And you'll then hear from us with a decision in December. If you register but do not get one of the 30 slots, then again, that's fine. You can use the coming months to develop a potential application offline to make it, and then make that decision about registration next year or further down the line. Okay, so we're now ready for questions. But firstly, as mentioned at the start, this webinar is being recorded, so it will be available soon for you to watch again. And Emma will share these slides as well with everyone. But I'll hand over now for any more questions in the chat, or if anyone wants to raise their hand.
So Joseph Cooper has a hand up, so we'll start with that one and then we can go to questions in the chat if that's helpful. Joseph.
Thank you. I think I'm going to be asking a little bit of a stupid question, so do forgive me. I have not read the guidance yet, so this may well be covered in that. Or I might be slightly misunderstanding the purpose of the framework. So my question is it that the library service applying needs to already be meeting the priority areas, people, place, purpose, policy, practice, etc.? To the extent where it might not even be within their benefit to be part of the framework as they're already running on that level. Is it not more logical to offer this out to library services that are not meeting all of those areas or are struggling to do so? And is there a danger that there will be a privilege towards those authorities that are funded and resourced to be able to meet all of these areas over those that struggle to do so?
I can come in first if you want on that. I think I understand your point. I think what we're trying to demonstrate here is that the framework will hopefully do a couple of things. So one, it'll allow those services that do meet the criteria to demonstrate that they do. So it gives them the opportunity to use it as an advocacy tool and to be part of the framework and demonstrate that they meet those criteria. For those services that don't meet it, they will receive a development statement. So it's not simply about rubber stamping and saying you do or you don't. It's basically here's how you do, or here's how you don't, but here's what you would need to do to address those elements of it. So I take your point that there is it will be easier for those services, I suppose, that have the resource and capacity to do it, to make that application. But that is, I suppose, is in part the point is those services that demonstrate or that can meet those criteria demonstrate it, and those that don't but want to be able to, or even if they don't think they might, but at the very worst, what you would get out of this process is, and here's what you now need to do to reach that criteria. So it's intended to do multiple things, but I think it's part of our development role. There are other bits of development work that we would aim to do to support services towards service improvement. But I don't know if Alison or Andy had anything to add to that. But it's very much about trying to, for those who can demonstrate they meet it, here's how you meet it. And for those who don't demonstrate it, at the very least they would get is and here's what you would need to do to get towards that process. I think it's fair to say. I'll take Andy and Alison's silence as a...
Okay, thanks, Luke.
No problem, Jez.
Brilliant, thank you. We've just got sorry, I'll come back to you if that's okay, Subnam. So Georgia was just clarifying that it's for England only, and Luke confirmed that that is the case, as that's ACE's or Arts Council England's where their development role is. Amit has asked, hi, can we attach appendices or appendices as evidence? I think you did have a slide talking about that documents don't need to be attached.
Yeah, there's no requirement to attach any form of document, so that's not enabled on Grantium. So within your answer on the application form, you should effectively demonstrate how you answer that essential requirement and supply further examples, and that should all be within your free text answer on the application form. There shouldn't be a need to attach any further documents.
Brilliant, thank you. Jasmine has asked, what do you envisage the acceptance rate to be?
Well, when we've looked at other schemes, when we did the research for this, we've compared it to similar schemes that Luke mentioned at the start, so ArtsMark, and we also looked at archives accreditation, and they work on a 10% rate of unsuccessful applications. So, I mean, we won't know until after the first year, really. We won't be able to see any patterns until this becomes more embedded, but that's what we're working on.
And will unsuccessful applicants be prioritised in future rounds?
So I think at the moment we had a process of you would come back into it. I don't think we'd necessarily agreed on what would happen next. I mean, like we say, this is a new scheme. It's early. Well, it's very early in it. So I think there'll be a number of learning points for us through the process. So I think there was other questions around, do we envisage more applications and, more than 30 applicants in future years? I think some of these are questions that we need to understand as the process goes live. So I think it's fair to say that all the unknowns that are left with the scheme, we won't know until the scheme goes live. So, number of applicants, success rates, what the demand is on it. So I think some of that learning will be as we go along. I think I understand, if you're unsuccessful, I suppose you are then prepared for a new application. And I think we need to understand, would it be a case of if service X was unsuccessful, then you go back in? I don't think I think we had clarified it, but it's certainly something we would add to our sort of post-action review, I think is fair to say. And that's where there's the helpful feedback as well for us to know. So one for us to take away.
Thank you. We've got Ayab's question about completing the application offline, which has already been answered. And Elizabeth Chapman has kindly posted the link to the questions further down the chat. So if anyone's interested in having a look at those as well. But the application does need to be submitted through Grantium. We've got a question from Catherine. I'm not sure which council, but they say our authority has a council level account, which the library sits under. This has made access somewhat problematic. Would they need or could they get a specific library service only Grantium account now that the framework has been launched?
Shall I come in on that one? Yes, that would be acceptable. It's really there are a number of different ways you can kind of set yourselves up. The key thing is that your Grantium account represents your library service, not just an individual library site. But I think that's you're pointing towards that. If you have a local authority account already, I think in an ideal world you would have access to that. You would be set up as a user on that, and you would be able to create an application within that. However, if that is not the case and you cannot have access to that, it's probably worth giving our customer services team a call in the first instance to see if there's something they can do about that. And one of their alternatives would be to advise you to set up a new account. But I would probably call them in the first instance and just have a word.
And there is a comment from someone further down as well to say that they do have a separate one for their library. So yeah, it sounds like whichever of those works best once customer services advise. Fiona Tan has asked, will it always be 30 registrations per annum?
Yeah, so again, I think this was in part to manage a number of things. Workload is part of it, and also because it's a new scheme. I think we would review that again. So I think we need to look at workload. So I think if we had, a significant number of people who were looking to apply next year, we would look at that. So this has very much been set up as version 1 and the sort of first application process. I think, I wouldn't want to unilaterally just put more workload onto our teams internally, but I think part of our review is going to be what's worked well, what could be potentially improved. And one of those conversations is there an opportunity to open this up to more registrations? Because we know, unlike other schemes, for example, museums, where there's a significantly larger number of potential applicants, we know that there are 152 applicants at the moment, local government reorganisation aside. At the moment, there are 152 potential applicants to this. So we know the number that are there. So I think it's something we would certainly consider as it comes into the next iteration for April next year.
Thank you. And just another question on that 30 places. Is it first come, first served for those places?
Yes, I think is the answer to that one.
Yeah. Joanne Launder has asked, is there a requirement for a compulsory conversation with your relationship manager before you apply?
No, there's no requirement. Sorry, I have the mic open now, so I'm just hogging it. Apologies, guys.
Go ahead.
No, there's no requirement for a mandatory conversation to have it. Like say the guidance is up there and should hopefully be pretty self-explanatory. And there's an opportunity to engage with our customer service colleagues as well. And you ask questions to us if anything's unclear, but there's no requirement for a mandatory conversation.
Brilliant, thank you. Sophia has asked, if we are not ready to apply this year, can we still get support from the LRM, I assume that's Libraries Relationship Manager, about how to develop the service according to the framework? Sorry if I've got that acronym wrong, please correct me.
Yeah, I mean, I think, sorry, Alison, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, just to say that, yes, our Libraries Relationship Managers are there for informal advice. So through the Libraries Connected regional meetings, things like that, if you want to ask informal questions about an offline application, I'm sure they can offer the advice and can also point you in the right direction for additional support from our sector stakeholders as well. And then we've also got the Libraries email if you want to contact our team via email, and we can help you there as well.
Thank you. Do you anticipate any additional funding opportunities for successful applicants, or conversely, to support unsuccessful applicants to be able to achieve accreditation?
I would say not at the moment. No, again, I think, like we say, this is still very early doors. So part of the reason that we took this on is that it is akin to some of our other accreditation schemes through museums and ArtSmart. So there are requirements around accessing additional funding being required to be on the framework to access that. That's not in the conversation at the moment. That's not to say it'll never be in the conversation. But again, we have a smaller pool of potential applicants from libraries, and also as well, if we're limiting the number of people that can apply, it seems unfair for us then to say, and if you haven't got this, you can't access. So again, that for us feeds into much more of that growing and evolution of the framework. I don't think we would necessarily we wouldn't have budget to help support unsuccessful applicants, but again, I think there's a conversation for us to be had as a team as to what might we do that might support some of those strands of it around policy and people. So it gives us a bit of a framework to work to as well. But again, there's nothing concrete in place at the moment.
Thank you. Kate has asked for a reminder of the timeline. I can see Kirsty has responded with a screenshot of the slide below, and obviously that will be in the email as well, that goes out after this webinar. So hopefully that helps, Kate. Jasmine has asked, is there a concrete benefit to joining the BIF framework that we can point to when feeding back to the rest of our teams internally? For example, specific funding available, specific support available. Sorry, lots less there. And there is that slide that you showed flashed up fairly early on, Alison, which I think will help, but I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that as well.
I think there is, I suppose, like we said as well, that there isn't things like, for example, you have to be accredited in order to be an NPO organisation or access project grant funding. I think it's more at the moment, it's about demonstrating how you support against those priority areas, and then being able to use that as an advocacy tool, for example, locally, to say we are on the framework, we are an accredited service, and also to kind of benchmarks, maybe not the right word, but as a comparator, as to see where you stand within the landscape of the wider library services. I think these are conversations, I think it's fair to say, Alison, that came out in some of the development of this over time was, should it be doing X? Should it be doing Y? Should it contribute to these? And I think they're all very good and valid questions and speak to the way that other schemes work. But I think because this is so early in the process, in its infancy, we need to get that launched first and then understand what that might then be used as a tool. How is that working at a local level? How is that working nationally? But I think at the moment we'd be adding barriers to the sector if we started doing some of that straight away. But I think there are conversations to be had on that as well.
Thank you. Final question on the chat for the time being. If someone has registered and then realises they cannot proceed, does this open a slot for the 31st registered on the list? I suppose it's how registration versus application work, isn't it?
Of course. I'll field this one. So I think it would be very helpful if you could get in touch with us at your earliest kind of realization of that. I think would be very helpful, and it's a tweak within the system that our IT team would have to manage, but it could then be possible for someone to for another slot to be opened up. So yeah, if you're able to let us know at your earliest convenience, that would be super.
Brilliant, thank you. The hand that was up earlier has gone down, so hopefully that's because the question has been answered. But if not, please feel free to put your hand back up or post in the chat. Ayab has just asked, is there a word limit for each question?
Yes, it's 3,000 characters.
Brilliant, thank you. I think that's all of. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, just one thing I wanted to mention, Emma, as well, that I think I hadn't covered in too much more detail, was just around the statutory element in the superintendent's bit. I think, as Andy had mentioned, it's a 5-year process, or a 5-year being on the framework, and then there'll be a revalidation again at the end of that. While we would, that doesn't stop anyone doing their normal business as usual, looking at service redesign, looking at changes. We know that the reality of the situation that you are all in from a local government point of view means that sometimes there are changes and significant changes that need to be made locally. We would only review a service on the framework if they failed within their statutory duty, if there was an element there around failing around their obligations. So this isn't saying once you're on the framework, nothing can ever change. But if there were, significant changes, and there would have to be pretty significant changes in there, that's where we would look at what that means for the framework. Hopefully, we won't get to that point, but I think that would be on a case by case basis. So it's just to clarify a bit that there are changes that will happen in that 5-year period. They would have to be fairly significant for it to then affect your place on the framework.
Thank you. Okay, last chance for any more questions. If anybody has anything that hasn't quite been answered yet, I will also send out obviously the slides, and there'll be email addresses on there for you to email, as well as all the guidance links as well. So yeah, any more questions would be great. I think that's it. Thank you, Alison, Luke, and Andy.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, bye.
Thank you.